friends. This is Spencer Michaud. Today we're going to be talking about the full moon lunar eclipse in the second decan of Pisces. Hope that you're having a wonderful afternoon out there. We're going to be going on a deep dive of all the Piscean symbolism. We're going to talk a little bit about Virgo season. We're going to talk about Jupiter hosting this full moon eclipse from Cancer, its exaltation. We're going to be going through a little bit of a journey here. I hope that you're having a wonderful, wonderful afternoon. Let me know if you're here in the chat, and it would be lovely to see you here today. Rachel Fletcher is here. What's up, Rachel? You have secured your spot as the first commenter once again. Happy eclipse season from Roanoke, Virginia. Always love to see you here, Rachel. Hope everything's going well your way, my friend. Okay, we've got Rachel has been the first commenter. Let's do a couple announcements before we dive back into the chat. A bunch of things that I have to share with you before we dive into it today. You can find me over at spencermichaud.com. I have all sorts of wonderful astrological offerings over there. This is a great time to reach out for a reading. Virgo season is a wonderful time to start making plans and to get yourself organized. Eclipse season is really important as far as new chapter markers. Helping to contextualize all of that information into a practical, tangible plan, I think can be really helpful around this time of year. So if you've been on the fence about a reading, this is a great time to test it out, try it out, see what you think. I've got all sorts of different levels of readings that are available over there. Click on the book now button right now, schedule a reading today. I also have a sale going on, kind of an indefinite sale for the time being, 20% off all my digital recordings using the code SAGMOONMAGIC. Just been really excited about some of the work that my beautiful daughter's been doing on Instagram and TikTok, and have a lot of wonderful people that have been joining us on the channel from some of her social media channels. So as a celebration of that, I've been taking 20% off all my digital recordings. I've got the Decans series on there. I've got the Dignity and Devotion Planetary Magic series, Stars and Cards, all sorts of good stuff. Make sure you take advantage of that. It's a great way to support the channel and to help me keep the lights on here, to pay for all of these tools that go into this live stream every week. Appreciate all of you. Hope you can take advantage of that. I also have a little secret announcement that isn't quite an announcement, but Decan Walk 2526 is going to be starting on Monday, October the 6th. It's not quite available for launch yet, but I wanted to just put this out there so you get ready. It's going to be super exciting. The easiest way to know when that card is going to be going live is to sign up for my newsletter, which is helping you to get 10% off all of my readings that I offer. You're going to know exactly when that Decan Walk goes live. Decan Walk is super cool. We're going to be going on a year-long journey together where we're through the language of the 10-degree sections of the zodiac that are associated with a tarot card, with fixed stars, with a daimon or a spirit that's guiding us on the way. We're going to share our collective stories. We're going to look at charts. We're going to be able to really connect with one another and have a sense of community. So Decan Walk, I've been doing this for the past 2 years in a row. We've got a really wonderful group that we meet with every other Monday, the first and third Monday of the month. And it has just been a really not only informative, but really hopeful and, validating experience for everyone involved. So I hope that you'll join me for that. Sign up for the newsletter to know when that's going live. Probably within the next week or so, we're going to be pushing the launch button on that. Also, go over and find my partner, Tanya Andrews, on Third Coast Mojo. She's got a sale going on for eclipse season with the Supermoon box set. You can see all sorts of wonderful things. She's got an exalted Taurus moon soap, oil, salts. There's all sorts of cool things, herbal blend. It's really amazing stuff. 25% off the Supermoon box set, Moon and Taurus stuff. The perfect thing to help you through eclipse season, which sometimes can be a little bit challenging. Although this eclipse, as far as eclipses goes, this one feels like it's somewhat fortuitous, but to really supercharge your practice, this Supermoon box set can get you where you want to be. So go find her, Tanya Andrews, over at Third Coast Mojo. And thank you everyone who's been supporting that work over there. We've had some really nice folks that have been stopping by that have been supporting the business and been leaving some wonderful comments. So thank you so much for supporting local businesses. All right, friends, last thing I have is if you want to support the channel today, you can buy a super chat while I'm live here on YouTube, or you can become a patron over at buymeacoffee.com. That is my chosen Patreon-like website where you can donate, buy me a coffee, buy me the gift of time, really help fund my book library so that I can keep doing this research to bring you the astrology every single week. It is so appreciated. And thank you so much for everyone who has helped me to continue to stay in business doing all of this work each week. This is my full-time job, so all of these donations are very, very helpful. So thank you for your support over there, and appreciate you. The easiest thing you can do if you want to support the channel, even if you don't have the means to support physically or materially, do me a favor, like and subscribe. Spread the word, get the word out. Tell your friends about this live stream. Say, hey, we got a really supportive community over here. Come check it out. Like the video so we can please the algorithmic gods and turn on that notification bell. So appreciate all of you friends. And I'm going to welcome a few more friends here. Few more friends. Welcome, friends. All right, let's see who else we got coming on into the chat here. Beneldo, what's up, Laura? Nice to see you. Hope everything's going well your way, my friend. We had some big news out of Wisconsin. I know you just moved to Ohio, but my football team yesterday traded for Micah Parsons, who is man, for those of you who don't know football, he's probably one of the best defensive players in the NFL. And Laura was asking me about, how did your Neptune sextile Uranus manifest? And I think that was kind of the manifestation for me, something that was part of a much bigger, larger organization and story that wasn't quite personal, but had a boost of energy, of like a shocking thing out of left field, but one that brought a lot of hope. And maybe, hopefully the Neptunian hope isn't ill-placed, but that was the kind of experience I was having from that book. So let me know your Neptune Uranus sextile stories from this week. KP is here. What's up, Karen? Nice to see you. Hi, Spencer and all from Cleveland, off work today and happy to catch a live. I really like the new shorts on YouTube. Oh, thanks, Karen. Yeah, I've been trying out some new things, just trying to make my content more accessible to more people. Oftentimes there have been some advice given to chop up little pieces into digestible bits, and I've been trying to do that. It's work, but I think it really is. It's bringing in some new folks, and thank you for the positive feedback with that. I'm experimenting a little bit, so we're just trying to get all the mix and balance right. Music, how long, what I'm talking about, but yeah, I really appreciate that, Karen. K-Wow is here from Raleigh, North Carolina. Nice to see you, K-Wow. Hope everything's going your way, my friend. K-Wow says, happy to catch this live before celebrating a bestie's birthday tonight. She's a Virgo sun and rising. Well, cheers and happy birthday to your friend, and hope everything is going well for them this solar return ahead and through their birthday season. My friend Susanna is here. What's up, Susanna? Susanna's joining us from Finland. Moi, 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 all my Finnish friends, which is hello in Finnish. So thank you for joining me, Susanna. Hope everything's going well your way. Susanna has been working real hard on a play that she's been working on, maybe musical theater perhaps. So she's doing a great job with that. Super talented artist and musician. So thanks for joining us again, Susanna. Manel's laughing. Are you laughing at the Packers? Oh, I've been kind of riding a little bit of a ecstatic high for the last 48 hours because I don't know. Say what you will about American sports. I'm somebody who really enjoys just the artistry of it. I know that there's some things about it that are problematic, and I completely acknowledge those things. But every once in a while, when you have a nice distraction from some of the horrors of the world, and let's be real, it's a distraction. But sometimes we have to take those little joyful moments where we can get them. And that experience for me this week was it's the anticipation and hope of something new and of a prospect that could lead to good feelings in the future. And I think this eclipse is going to be part of that, making a wish, seeing a dream come true. So we can talk about that a little bit today too. Kiki Law is here. What's up, Kiki? Nice to see you. Says gracious greetings. I hope you're doing well, Kiki. This is a new name I'm seeing in the chat, so welcome. Lovely to have you with us, my friend. Okay, let's start breaking it down. What do you say? We've got a full moon lunar eclipse that we're going to be building towards over the next week. We have the full moon lunar eclipse happening on September the 7th at 15 degrees of Pisces. Just some big picture thoughts with this eclipse. It's an opposition between the sun and the moon from Virgo, the second 10-degree section of Virgo, to the second 10-degree section of Pisces. We have the south node conjunct the sun. We have the sun also co-present with Mercury, a very powerful position for Mercury in Virgo. We have the moon conjoining the north node, aka Rahu, a place of desire, a place of sometimes insatiable desires. There's a story of the north node and of Rahu as a demon who tried to consume the elixir of life, and he had his head severed by another, maybe more powerful deity. And because he had consumed part of that elixir of life, he didn't die. He became immortal. But now he's hungry and he's trying to consume and desires something that is almost insatiable. So we may have a desire for something during this full moon lunar eclipse that we may be desiring balance between our physical and spiritual selves. Although if you study spiritual practices, those things are, it's not necessarily one or the other. They're just kind of part of a unified whole. We'll talk about how to maybe come to terms with imperfection with this lunar eclipse. We also have Saturn that's going to be retrograding back into Pisces, that's going to be co-present with the moon. So we'll take a look at that too, because that's pretty significant. One thing I do like about this eclipse overall, it is hosted by an exalted Jupiter in a trine to the moon. The sun is also hosted by an exalted Mercury. So this is a really, really, I would say it's a positive eclipse, as positive as an eclipse can get, as far as the hosts that are providing resources for both the sun and the moon. We also don't necessarily have a negative aspect from Mars, although we do have the opposition with Saturn. But I think that from what we've been experiencing with Saturn recently in Aries, this might actually be a little bit of a relief, even though there might be some difficulties we're dealing with in the Piscean area of our chart. So those are kind of my big picture thoughts with it. I do feel like we are having to let go of process. We are having to let go of the how and surrender to our intentions, and then divine assistance with those intentions. You know, being able to work on our inner worlds, our inner spiritual practices, being able to cleanse our minds and our emotions, our beliefs, to be able to come to a place of centeredness and a place of peace. That is really the way forward with all of this, to come to that inner stillness, rather than having to work so hard on the externalized process. This isn't an eclipse where we have to just grind it out. To me, this is an eclipse where we're going to be really like working on our faith, working on our ability to create space in our lives so that we can be present for the divine when it wants to speak or work through us as channels. We're going to be getting in touch with our inner Neo in the Matrix, plugging into the Matrix and like downloading Kung Fu, and just by, I don't know, sort of awakening from some of the challenges of this physical reality that part of it has been potentially an illusion, right? We have these kind of challenges of physical reality and spiritual reality and essence versus form. There's a lot of spiritual practices in the antiquity that talk about this physical reality being a sort of a Maya, an illusion. And how do we get past some of those challenges while also accepting some of the parts of reality, part of the limitations of time and space and resources? All of those things are going to be important during this eclipse period. We'll break it down in great detail. We've got a few more people stopping in here. Let's see. Laura says, our Mars return nearly killed me, and the eclipse is on my Mars, but promotion? You got a promotion. Oh, strange times. Mars and my health appears to not be a happy relationship. Well, I'm sorry about that. We're still going through some challenging times with Mars moving through Libra. Um, One of the things that was interesting to me about, if you'll bear with some more football metaphors here, uh, the owner of the Dallas Cowboys, his name is Jerry Jones. He is he's a character, and he has a Libra sun and a Mercury retrograde in Libra. And one of the things that the manifestations astrologically was Mars was moving over his Mercury. Mercury is a place of making a deal, right? The place of negotiations. Now, Mars, when it's moving through the second decan of Libra, tends to disrupt negotiations. One of the reasons that one of the best players in the NFL was available was because contract negotiations broke down on an extension to Micah Parsons because Jerry Jones wanted to bypass having to talk with a player agent and wanted to talk to the player directly, which is kind of a big no-no in a professional sports league. So I thought it was fascinating to me that a big change happened because of a breakdown in a contract negotiation. We've talked about this as we were building to this eclipse, that we may have difficulty coming to consensus. We may have difficulty honoring our vows, our contracts, etc. So we're still moving through Mars in Libra for this eclipse as well. But I think that we're going to be moving more into the disruptions of our ability to keep our equilibrium and our ability to maintain that inner equilibrium with Mars in the third decan of Libra for this eclipse, after we have kind of worked through some of the challenges of broken agreements or contract negotiations breaking apart. But as far as health stuff, Mars, we had a participant in the chat last week, Kate, who was scheduling a surgery around this period of time. And luckily, she got a date that was when Mars had a benefic enclosure, a place where Venus and Jupiter were going to be assisting and protecting. And Mars is often associated with surgeons or the surgery itself. So I think that this is an interesting time for maybe cutting things out of our life that aren't serving us, with both the Sun and Mercury conjoining the South Node in a Cazimi that's going to be coming up after this eclipse. Just letting go of certain things is going to be really important, and increasing our faith that when we let go of something, that the universe is going to provide what we need, right? When we let go of our attachment to how everything has to work out, dictating terms to the divine never really works out that great. I know that in some cases we can nudge fate through our practices like astrological magic and things of that nature, but even magic has a mysterious element to it where sometimes it shows up in ways that we didn't quite anticipate. We might be trying to achieve a certain essence, but it may come to us through a different form than we originally anticipated and thought. So that's going to be important as we move forward with this eclipse. Candy Corn, Corinne says, hello, star friends. Hello, Corinne. Hope you're doing well. Hope everything's going well your way, my friend, over there in sunny Connecticut, I hope. I think that's where you're coming from. Karen says, this eclipse is literally on my nodes. Pisces, North Node, Virgo, South. Well, this is going to be a big one for you, Karen. This is one that is going to ignite some fated events. The nodes really take us through some really important fated events, and when it's activating the nodes of fate in our own charts, sometimes these are things that come to us that we might not be able to avoid, for better or for worse. Doesn't necessarily mean it has to be negative. It just means that it's something that has probably been baked into the story of your life for quite some time, and it isn't just appearing out of the blue. This is maybe something that's going to be the manifestation of something that's been building over many months and many years potentially. So you'll recognize it when you see it. And I think a lot of the themes of process and accepting maybe some divine assistance of doing some spiritual cleansing without getting attached to the material outcomes, I think is going to be part of that story, and probably part of a lifelong lesson, I would say, as well. I know you've said I think you have some other Virgo stuff in your chart too, and learning how to surrender to the divine plan is oftentimes a Pisces North Node manifestation. It's difficult to do, I would say, as a Virgo stellium myself, Jupiter, Mars, and Saturn. I always have an idea of how I want things to pan out, and the how is very important to me. But I've learned over time that when I get so fixated and so attached to that, I can suffer by becoming attached to that process. And sometimes by stubbornly refusing to change the process, I destroy the very thing that I'm trying to create. And life can flow much easier, like flowing with the Tao, like flowing with water, the water sign of Pisces. When we come and we start to let go of the oars of life. This axis, when we are leaning into the Piscean part of it, I think speaks to trying to paddle upstream. When we have the South Node in Virgo, where that's our tool, right? That's our implement. Where we're really we're paddling upstream, but the current is taking us somewhere else. And what we're doing when we're paddling upstream, yeah, we can kind of stay stuck where we're at, but we get exhausted doing it. We might start to suffer. Our muscles might start to fatigue. We start to question what we're doing here when we're paddling upstream. And oftentimes there comes a breaking point where we say, I have to let go of these oars, and I have to let spirit, I have to let the divine, I have to let the Tao, I have to let the universe take me where it wants to go. And I am an instrument of this energy. I am a channel for this energy, not necessarily just the source itself. I'm connected to source. I am source and I am not source. It's sort of this weird paradox with it, right? And I think that surrendering quality is going to be really important. So Tarja is here. What's up, Tarja? Moi Tarja from Helsinki, Finland. We've got our Finnish crew coming in today. Lovely to see you in the chat. One of the two Tarjas that we have from Finland. So it's lovely to have you join us here, my friend. Tarja Temelin, the cosmic dancer. Cosmic dance, right? Karen says, thank you. Yes, Pluto is there too, remaining open to whatever comes. Seems less exhausting at this point, honestly. Yeah, right? Letting go of the oars. Stop paddling in directions that aren't bearing fruit, that the narrative of your life is telling you that you might need to let go of. I know that we talk a lot about on this channel of the wisdom of letting go, the wisdom of creating space, the wisdom of less rather than just exponential growth all the time, the wisdom of the ground laying fallow, of appreciating the winter and fall seasons in our life, not just in the physical universe, but in our spiritual universes. Sometimes we have times where we might not be able to expand because we have something blocking the way. We have to let go of something first and create the space that eventually the universe will fill, because nature abhors a vacuum. But we have to create that space first. Sometimes our lives are so packed full of things that we don't have any room for abundance to reach us. And I think it's a real, it takes a lot of spiritual and physical maturity to recognize that and to surrender to it. And I think that, again, this isn't as popular of a voice in late stage capitalism and Western civilization that is obsessed with growth, obsessed with more, obsessed with abundance. But I really do think that there are certain physical rules, and then there are spiritual rules, and they're not the same. And as a channel here that's trying to focus on balance, I think that we have to acknowledge the spiritual reality sometimes versus just the physical things that we are seeing. This is one of the things about Pisces is faith is the definition of being able to accept and surrender to something that we can't necessarily see tangibly. That's the essence of faith. And there may be some things in our life right now where we can't necessarily see all the possible outcomes, but we have to have faith that there is some benevolence in this universe that wants to guide us in a direction that is for our greater good. Now, that can be really difficult when we're seeing lots of suffering and tragedy going on, a lot of things that we may disagree with in the collective. But I think that the nature of hope, the nature of faith, is to be able to be available for the work that needs to come through us. Javiera is here. What's up, Javiera? Says hello. Hope all is well. Javiera joining us from Ontario, Canada, I believe, via Nicaragua, if I'm not mistaken. So welcome. Hope everything's going well your way, my friend, and that you're having a wonderful Friday afternoon. All right. So let's start diving into some of these details. We'll spend maybe an hour or so doing so. Let's see how long we get today. So the first place I would like to start, let's just bring the chart to the stage. And here is the chart. Here it is big for those of you with maybe more challenged eyesight. Okay, you can see that we've got the sun at 15 degrees of Virgo, co-present with Mercury in the south node, the moon here with the north node, and with Saturn, Jupiter in a trine. And now I'm going to make this a little bit less big. My apologies. But this is part of our balance here. So we have here this Virgo stack up opposing the Pisces stack up. And we've got an opposition. So oppositions are of the nature of Saturn. Sometimes we are trying to increase that which is lacking and decrease that which is excessive. Sometimes there is a blockage. But I really truly believe that the essence of Saturn is one that is aspiring towards balance. It was said to be a planet of Nemesis, and Nemesis was the goddess that restored right proportion to the twists and turns of fate, right? The random distributions of 2K and of fate. So through our efforts, we may be able to increase that which is lacking and decrease that which is excessive. Saturn doesn't always have to be about giving something up necessarily. It's just about bringing things into equilibrium. And that is really, I think, shown to us in the exaltation of Saturn in the sign of Libra. So we have the sun in Virgo too, second decan of Virgo, right? We got some nice comments in here. Thank you, Karen. Appreciate you. And yes, Javier, I have a good memory for some things, but it's nice. I like learning about where everyone's joining me from, because I just have such an interest in just this global community, which I'm so honored to have here today. So the sun in Virgo too, with Mercury in the south node. Now, I've been talking a little bit about the north node conjoining the moon, and this is an increase of the qualities related to the second decan of Pisces. Now, because we have the nodes always opposing each other exactly, we have the south node, a place of decrease, conjoining both the sun and Mercury. And both of the sun and Mercury are going to pass over the south node, okay, before making a cazimi, right? So they're both going to be passing over the south node of the moon before making a cazimi later on, after this eclipse is unfolding on the 13th. We'll talk about that. I'll come back to that in a second, but keep that in mind. Okay, so with the sun in Virgo too, Mercury and the south node, we are reducing our attention to detail, I guess you could say. Like this decan of Virgo, I'll bring the chart up with this decan of Virgo. So here is the flashcard for Virgo 2. And you can see the 9 of Pentacles and a figure that is in a lush garden, right? A figure that is really, really kind of assessing all of their resources, right? Assessing all of their abundance. They've got a falcon. This woman has a falcon on her hand, who is a hooded falcon figure that often can represent the ability to weed out inefficiencies, the ability to get rid of anything that would threaten our final product through the process of doing hard, dirty work that Austin Coppock talks a lot about in his chapter called The Hammer and the Anvil in 36 Faces in regards to the deity Hephaestus. Now, there is another deity associated with this decan from the 36 heirs of the zodiac, a Hellenistic fragmentary text called the Moirai. And the Moirai were the weavers of fate. We had the weaver, we had the measurer, and then we had the cutter. And those fates help to weave a human life, right? So we have kind of these themes of doing this hard behind the scenes dirty work to create something beautiful, a Venus ruled decan in Virgo too. We have the weaving of spirit into matter, into a life, like a divine edict, so to speak, of weaving these ideas and these fated events into an actual life. We are adorning spirit into matter or enclosing it into matter. And all of that happens through our skills, through our ability to take something like the abundance that we've grown in the gardens of the respective summers of our lives and preserve it through transmuting it in some way, through canning, through taking the raw elements and doing something artistic with them to create something beautiful that will be passed on for many generations to come. And we're taking all of those themes and we're saying, you might have to let go of some of that. You might have to let go of the attachment to your process. You may have to reduce your critical eye to be able to just make something happen, right? You may have to surrender to the process rather than continually working on something and working on something and working on something. I've been guilty of this. I've been guilty of it this week. I want to launch my programs here, but I'm like, I got to tweak a few things before I put this out into the world. So sometimes when we release our attachment to that, we can let things flow in our lives a little bit better. Again, if you want to sign up for Deck and Walk 2526, get on that email list or send me an email and I will make sure to give you all the information for that. That's going to be coming within the next week or so. But how do we take something from the past? Like maybe this is where we're having to revisit something from our past so that we can untie some of the knots that are keeping us bound to it. This is one of the things that the Sun and Mercury are going to be going through. To be able to renew Mercury in the heart of the Sun at that cazimi at 20 degrees of Virgo on the 13th of September, in a decan of Virgo that's associated with passing on a legacy. So to be able to pass on a legacy, to complete a material process, we kind of have to surrender to some of the attachment to the how. And we have to get very, very clear on our why. Okay, so how do we go from our how to our why? So a couple of things to think about with this decan of Virgo: process and production, binding essence into matter, unification, beauty, and balance through hard, dirty work, concealment, behind the scenes labor, weeding out inefficiencies, but also solitude and self-reliance. That's another thing we might have to let go of, is the attachment to doing all of the work ourselves. Virgo prides itself on being self-sufficient. Maybe we need to allow other people to help us within the process. Maybe we need to surrender to help, outside help. I've been trying to get one of my neighbors that I've been working with a lot recently to surrender some of his self-reliance. He's in a stage of life where he could use some assistance, and I've been trying to get him to go to a group like a senior center that my partner works at, with all these events where a lot of the problems that he's facing, I think, could really benefit from just being part of a community, part of a group, and surrendering some of that attachment to saying, I have to do all of this myself. Now, he's someone who has been very self-sufficient for his entire life, but due to some health challenges, like, he could use some assistance, you know, and I think that it's a really difficult thing to do sometimes, especially when you've lived your life a certain way for your entire life or been forced to do so. To make those changes can be hard sometimes, but I think it really is part of our growth as people, our growth and our wisdom to be able to learn when the way we've done something in the past is not going to bear fruit any longer. Questions with the Sun in Virgo too, conjoining the South Node and Mercury. What needs to be refined in our life? How do we weed out the vermin that threaten the process? What physical sacrifices are necessary to infuse essence into form? How do I work with humility and devotion behind the scenes? How do I delay gratification until the work is done? And how do I create space in my life to focus on the project at hand? Now, keep in mind, all of those themes are subject to the South Node, something where we're having to revisit something from the past and maybe let go of our attachment to those types of things. Oh yeah, we've got a tiny snail there. Javier says in that card. Yeah, right? We've got this tiny snail here. Slow and steady wins the race, maybe on some level. I'm sure that there's extra symbolism with the snail. I have a good book that I would probably reference for this. It's called The Secrets of the Waite-Smith Deck by Katz. And I don't remember the other author, but I'd have to look that up. There's probably some information in that book about the snail in particular. So, of course, the sun is going to be hosted by Mercury at 10 degrees of Virgo. It's co-present, a really powerful host for the sun, an ability to identify some of the flaws in our process and maybe accept some of them, right? Now, let's talk about the moon a little bit. So the moon here is going to be in the second decan of Pisces. This is a decan that is associated with Jupiter as its ruler. Okay, so we have Pisces as the traditional ruler of the entire sign of Pisces, but also of this face of Pisces, this 10-degree section of Pisces. This is one of the most Jupiterian decans in the entire zodiac, and for better or for worse. And for better, one of the things we see with this, we have some really positive takes from the Book of Tea and the Book of Thoth as the Lord of material happiness and the Lord of happiness. Austin Coppock calls it the net in regards to Indra's net, if you're familiar with that story. Susie Chang calls it fishes and wishes, like making a wish and seeing that wish come true, but releasing attachment to how that is going to play out. It's sort of setting the intention and then saying, all right, I'm going to set this intention. I'm going to visualize exactly what I would like, or the essence of what I would like, the platonic form of what I would like. And then I need to be open to how the divine is going to meet me halfway. Like meeting the divine halfway is really important, I think, when we're making wishes in this decan. Now, there is a fixed star. There is a daimon in this decan called Dolos. And Dolos is sort of a warning in this decan. And also, we have the story of Phaethon in this decan. So Dolos and Phaethon have some similar energies. There's nuance to it, but they're both apprentices. They're both kind of apprentices. Dolos of Prometheus, who was trying to craft humanity out of clay. And Phaethon, sort of the son of Apollo, or Helios, I guess you could say, son of Helios more specifically, who drove the chariot of the sun across the sky and was not really ready to drive that chariot yet. It was like he got the keys to the Ferrari, he really wasn't, he didn't have his license yet. I went down a weird YouTube rabbit hole about the two Coreys. Remember the two Coreys from the 80s, Corey Haim and Corey Feldman? And I was watching a little documentary on Corey Haim, and there's a movie in the 80s called License to Drive, where this kid, I watched it a few months ago, and he basically just takes the car out, and all sorts of disasters happen because of his misfortune. He didn't have his license. It was bad. It was like, as a parent watching it, I was like, oh my God, that's insane. Corey Haim, incidentally, has the moon in Pisces. So maybe he was playing out some of that Phaethon energy, like just the inability to set limits, right? To follow the rules, to have patience with process. So we may have a little bit of an overconfidence with Pisces II. This is one of the dangers of this eclipse, because the moon is conjoining the North Node. We may be making wishes and just writing, checks that our ass can't cash. Like it is. We have to be real careful about that. We don't want to overestimate our abilities. Yes, we want to set intentions and surrender to the process, but we also don't want to maybe launch an endeavor, launch a process, launch a business, whatever it is, before we have paid attention to some of the details that could trip us up into the future. The story of Dolos is one where Dolos is trying to craft, he's trying to mimic his master Prometheus. When Prometheus leaves, Prometheus has already crafted his version of humanity called Aletheia, or truth. So Dolos is taking some of that leftover clay and crafting his version called pseudo-logos, which translates to falsehood. He ran out of clay when he got to the feet. So falsehoods, they may look very similar to the actual truth, the Aletheia, but they're not going to be able to stand on their two legs, because eventually the flaws are going to be found out. The inability of physical matter to represent a spiritual, eternal ideal. The flaws inherent in that are part of the lessons of this. Now, that's not always a bad thing. Like, I think as long as we accept the fact that our vision may need some compromise, the fact that when we try to bring something from our imagination, from our prayers, into the physical world, that the very nature of the physical world is subject to the limitations of time and space, and the process of order and entropy, of things coming together and things decaying. This is one of the greatest lessons of Virgo, spiritual lessons of Virgo, is accepting decay in our lives, accepting the aging process, accepting that we're going to have to let go of some things and that we can't take it with us. So we want to maybe preserve things as much as we can, but there will be times where we just have to say, I've done as much as I can. Now it's time for me to pass this on to the next generation, or pass this thing or whatever it is back to the earth so that it can be recycled into something new and something different. The fixed star that this eclipse is going to be hanging out with, we have two of them, a Chernar and Anka. A Chernar is in the Eridanus, a very long constellation that is basically a long river that connects the constellations of Orion, the hubristic hunter, to Hercules, the kneeling one, to humility. So this river of experiences leads from hubris to humility. And a Chernar, because of its associations with Phaethon, who flew too high and created frozen things on the earth, and then flew too low and lit things on fire, and because of his drowning in the river, there's been associations with some natural disasters with this fixed star, Chernar, with floods and fires in a lot of the traditional texts that talk about it. So there is a possibility we could see some floodings, some fires, some of those types of things that we have to deal with this eclipse on this fixed star. But I do think that the main themes and the main takeaways from this are, we probably will have an increased desire to do something that we may not quite be ready for yet. And it might be an insatiable desire because of that demon, that Rahu demon that has a severed head that is never able to be fulfilled. So be very careful about that. Be very careful of desiring a dream that can't possibly be fulfilled in the physical universe. And then how can we meet our dream halfway and say, you know what? This is good enough. I am satisfied with this. We have this figure, Falstaff, in the 9 of Cups that we have here. One of the characters, I believe, in Henry IV play, right, where he's a kind of a smug figure, but he's very self-satisfied. He's very indulgent. But we might be learning how to say, you know what, this is enough. I don't have to keep working on this process or working this process. I need to send it out into the world, or let the universe complete the last portion of it. All right, let's see what we've got here in the chat. Taria says, I've been quality of that. I have a quality of that. I have natal Saturn at 17 degrees of Virgo. You and me both, Taria. I've got Saturn at 21 Virgo, and Mars at 28. There is a lot of lessons in learning the hard way through getting so fixated on minutia that you miss the big picture. So this is an eclipse where we really need to we don't want to ignore the details. We don't want to ignore the minutia, but we want to make sure that the details are fitting within the grander scheme and vision of our lives. And sometimes we have to pull back from that and say, how is this really fitting in? Are we working on something? Is because we've done something the same way, is it really fitting into our current life? Is it really fitting into the divine plan with the Tao? Whenever I do my prayers every morning, I'd say a little mantra to both Ganesh and to Lakshmi as well, two deities I really resonate with in the Eastern tradition. And I always ask Ganesh to remove any obstacles that are inherent in the path and ones that are internally generated, and to help me come into alignment with the Tao or the divine plan. So how do we remove obstacles in our life and surrender to the divine plan? Again, not an easy thing to do, especially if we have certain trauma responses that make us want to control our physical environments. This is something I've had to work through as a child of divorce, as a child of single parents, where my environment was always changing. I think a lot of my Virgo tendencies come from saying, well, if I can't control this bigger picture, if I can't control everyone's fickle emotions, I'm going to control this tiny physical part of my life. And through healing some of that trauma and surrendering just to the process, it helps me, I think, to not be as controlling of my physical environment. And that's led to some better outcomes moving forward. Javier says, negative, a painfully slow pace, escape from reality, lack of involvement. The snail. Oh, there you go. Right. So that could be part of our story here too, is we might be feeling like we've got a slow pace, but we might be releasing the slowness of our pace too. This is another thing I've learned about Pisces placements. Sometimes it's a miraculous manifestation, and we don't have to always go through the physical rules of incarnation. Sometimes it just kind of appears. As I've been kind of looking at the, processing a giant trade this week from my favorite football team, it kind of just came together. There wasn't a ton of process. There was process behind the scenes, but it kind of just was like, boom, it just landed before anyone had really expected anything. And that to me is somewhat of a Piscean kind of manifestation, where it's just like, you've put the dream out into the world, you've said the prayer, and then like, it just happens. Like, it doesn't have to go through all these back and forth. It's just like, there it is. And that's kind of rare, I think, in the zodiac. I am usually somebody who, as a Virgo stellium, is like, hey, we have all these rules that we have to go through for manifestation. There's not the whole new age manifestation, just put your mind to it and then it's going to appear. I kind of resist that on some level and push back on it. But this decan is one of the few where, if you are really coming into alignment with your feelings, your emotions, your vision, I have seen miracles happen with this type of decanic energy. So interesting. Rachel says, big hello here from Ireland, Spencer and friends. Nice to see you, Rachel. Hope everything's going well your way across the pond. You're having a wonderful afternoon. Thanks for joining us, friend. Dimpy says, hey, what's up, Dimpy? He says, hi, Spencer and friends. Nice to be here again. Hope everything's going well your way, Dimpy. And I believe it's Virgo season, and it's maybe your birthday. So happy birthday to you, early or late, depending on what's going on. And I hope that I'm getting that correct, but hope you and our garden are lush. We talked a lot about gardening. Dimpy really embodies that 9 of Pentacles person in the garden, having just this beautiful, abundant garden. I believe joining us from the Netherlands. So welcome, Dimpy, and hope everything's going well your way. Karen says, how funny if the snail ends up being the animal drawn for this eclipse. We'll see. It isn't, but it could be another animal spirit. There might be a predator-prey relationship with that. Maybe that's the hint I'll give you. Taria says, sorry, guilty. Oh, no worries, friend. Javiera says, I wrote the positive as well, but it didn't show. Well, throw it in the chat, Javier. Let's see what you have for positives for the snail, or for this eclipse, I guess you could say. Okay, so let's talk about a few more details. Let's talk about the host of the moon. And I'm going to bring the chart back to the stage. So here you can see, now we're going to take a look at, I'm going to use blue. I like blue when we're doing Jupiter, like benefic things. And Jupiter is going to be providing resources from a trine to the moon. Oops, let's get rid of that. Oh, see, my attachment to things being perfect is going to eventually make it a little bit difficult for us to, there we go. Okay. So Jupiter is providing resources for the moon in this eclipse, this full moon, from a place of great power, honor, and merit. It's exaltation. The degree of exaltation of Jupiter is around 14 to 15 degrees of Cancer. And we have the moon applying to a trine to its host in a very, very good condition. So to me, this is one of those times when if we put a wish out into the universe, it could have real ramifications and ripple effects and really possibilities of coming true. Again, I put a little wish out for my team to make this trade, and like it worked. So who knows? But what types of things can Jupiter bring us from Cancer to the second decan of Cancer? Well, here we have the Three of Cups, right? We have the three graces coming together, toasting one another. This decan is, of course, called the Walled Garden by Austin Coppock in the 36 Faces. It is a decan that is associated with creating sort of a safe space, right? Creating this protected area to be able to grow in the way that is important for our growth, that is healthy for our growth. I have the sun in this decan. I have the sun at 15 degrees of Cancer. So this is something that's important to me personally. Like the energy of our group here has a lot of Cancer 2 vibes. We try to create a safe space for people to be able to express some of their vulnerabilities with kindness. And if there are threats to that kindness and to that safety, we eliminate that pretty quickly. So it's one of those things where Jupiter is going to be bringing us the right conditions to grow, bringing us the right conditions to be able to work through any of the things that could be blocking our manifestation, that could be blocking our ability to feel safe spaces, etc. I'm trying to center myself in here. What's going on here? There we go. So Jupiter is also this energy of conscientious actions that bring us honor and merit. And Suzanne, our resident other 15-degree Cancer, stepping in, right? She's also a 15-degree Cancer. So we're in the 15 Cancer club. So I think that it's a very fertile place. It's a very creative place. Susanna shows us that with all of her artistic endeavors. You know, I've been an artist in professionally in the past as well. So it is something where if we have the time and the space to create, we can be very productive within that space. But I do think that this is a planet, Jupiter, that brings order to the universe, right? It helps gather all the elements for success to be able to reach the final goal. And in this case, we may be gathering all the elements for that dream to come true, for that dream to be able to manifest. And all that we really are required to do is to create a protected space to do so. We also see in this decan the ability to meet up with supportive people in our lives, to create a sense of community behind those protected walls. So we may be able to create a wonderful experience through teaming up with other people, through creating this behind the scenes group or something of that nature. To me, this is a perfect manifestation of the decan walk, for example. I have this Deccan walk I've been doing for the last few years. We've been creating this place, I think, of trust where we can trust one another to be vulnerable about our shared stories, about our charts, to connect it with learning the language of astrology, of the planets, of the decans, of the tarot, of the fixed stars, etc. But we're successful in that because we are supportive of one another, and because we know that we can trust one another. And that's something that's really important to me, is creating that environment of trust where you are allowed to be yourself, even if we disagree about things. And not everybody agrees with one another. And hopefully we've created a space where you're allowed to be yourself, even if you're not at your best. I think that's the other thing too, is being allowed to be imperfect within those spaces, allowed to be vulnerable. When you go on a journey, and friends, we've had a few people that have gone through the complete 2 years of Decan Walk together. In the span of 2 years, you have some ups and downs. You have some experiences in your life that are positive, and you have some times when you may not be at your best. And I think over that time, we've learned to just appreciate the ups and downs of our lives, and seeing how the same transits can play out with different charts, and contacting different planets in different charts and in different houses with different time lords activated. It's so much valuable information that comes out of that. But I do think this eclipse is going to be helping us to manifest some of those supportive environments, to be able to take conscientious or conscious actions that will ultimately bring honor and merit and give us a sense of belonging. That's another thing that Cancer 2 is great at, is creating the sense of belonging. We've got KWOW stopping in with the Cancer rising at 15 degrees. Yeah, like, welcome to the 15-degree Cancer Club. You know, we also have at that degree a powerful fixed star, Sirius, which is sometimes obsessed with creating immortality and the return of fertility to the Nile River Valley. So I've seen another 15-degree Cancer rising KWOW is Michael Jordan. And Michael Jordan, man, what a legacy he created, right? He will live on with chaos, with glory, for many centuries to come. I think his exploits are going to be spoken about for quite some time. So there is this ability with Cancer, and especially around the second decan of Cancer, of trying to create something that will live beyond you as well. And that might be what we are feeling a little bit with Jupiter hosting this eclipse. All right, so let's talk a little bit about how this is going to unfold over time. Oops, sorry, that was my dad's chart. So we're going to see, he's a Pisces, by the way, Taurus rising, if you need to know. We're going to see this first aspect coming up. And before I move on to that, let's also recognize that there's a mutual reception between the moon and Jupiter. So the moon is going to be in Jupiter's sign and face, and Jupiter is going to be in the moon's sign. So they are exchanging resources. This is as powerful and of smooth, of flowing exchange of resources you can possibly get. A trine and a mutual reception. They have a vested interest in each other's success, and they're both in fairly good shape. So I think that this is a really an important detail to think about with that mutual reception between them as well. So the first aspect that we're going to see is going to be coming to us on the 9th. This is the first aspect that the moon makes when it is released from the bond, right? When it is released from this 15-degree conjunction or opposition on either side of the sun. That's a Hellenistic technique that talks about manifestations being sort of held in check. Now, when we have the first aspect, we're often looking for whether it's a positive or a flowing aspect like a trine or a sextile, or if it's a more difficult aspect like a square. In this case, we've got a flowing aspect between the moon and Venus, and that's actually happening. I'm going to adjust this here. It's happening at 15 degrees of Aries, not 18. Pardon me. So take a look around those two areas of your chart. Oops, no, I was right. Sorry, I'm looking at, man, see, this is what happens when you get too fixated on the details. I was looking at the wrong chart. So it is 18 degrees. Trust. You're the first thing that you are seeing here. So at 18 degrees of Aries, we do have the moon making its trine to Venus at 18 degrees of Leo. So our ability to make a royal decree, right? This is very close to the sun's maximum degree of exaltation, where we say, this is who I am and what I believe. And this is going to help us to feel a sense of validation that we might see with Venus in the second decan of Leo. We might be really like feeling validated for who we are and for the vision that we're manifesting with this first aspect. So far, so good with positive things coming together. Now, as we see this continue to unfold, we are going to see the Mercury and the Sun preparing for a cazimi of the South Node and preparing for a cazimi by conjoining the South Node. So over the course of those 2 days after the eclipse, 2 or 3 days, both Mercury and the Sun are going to be passing over that sort of portal of reduction where things generally leave the material plane. So we might have a period of time that might feel a little bit unsettling after this, where we might have to let go of some things. We might have to let go of an identity that is associated with process, that's associated with details. We might have to let go of an agreement, a contract like that Mercury might represent, something of that nature. But it's preparing us for a brand new start, for an important new start that is going to be coming up with the Mercury cazimi on the 13th. So here is the Mercury cazimi, and that's going to be at 20 degrees in the third decan of Virgo. So here is the 13th, 12th, and 20th, 12th and 13th, right? Where we see the cazimi of Mercury at 20 degrees of Virgo. Now, this cazimi of Mercury is going to be happening near a fixed star called Denebola. And Denebola is a fixed star in the constellation of Leo, but the tropical sign of Virgo. There's sort of this disconnect between those now because of a scientific concept called precession, where the constellations and the background of the fixed stars and the tropical zodiac signs are shifting a little bit each year. And this is in the kind of the back end, I guess you could say, of the lion. And there's a lot of associations with this fixed star of living your own life on the fringe, of like not necessarily conforming to other people's expectations. So when we release our attachment to what others think about us, about how this is going to look to our communities, that actually gives us a lot of freedom to do some things that might be just more appropriate for who we actually are and for our authentic self. So this is one thing to consider with this Mercury cazimi, is you might see the birth of doing things in a way that is outside the norm, that is it maybe more in alignment with who you are, but is not necessarily conforming to social expectation. Now, it's also the beginning of the end of a material process, right? Where we're putting the finishing touches on a legacy that we want to pass on to the next generation. This decan is also associated with coming to terms with entropy and decay. So there may be some really powerful lessons and ideas about coming to terms with the disintegration of form in whatever form that might come to us in. Maybe it's coming to terms with old age. Maybe it's coming to terms with some kind of home that is deteriorating or something of that nature. And we may be doing a lot of work towards repairing some of those things, taking care of our body, getting the medical checkups that we need, or whatever it is that can help us to preserve things against the entropy, which is the scattering of atoms that happens to all of us and everything over time. So that's our Mercury cazimi. That brings us to the last quarter moon on the 14th. So this last quarter moon is going to be in Gemini, and I'm going to move the chart so we can kind of see it in relationship, about 22-ish, 21, 22 degrees of Gemini and Virgo. So one of the things that we might be experiencing at this last quarter moon is potentially a need to make a choice, right? This is the decan where we see that one twin generally has to be sacrificed or sacrifice some of his immortality so that the other can continue and live. That might be a little bit challenging, could be a little painful, could be a little bit like, oh, that's a little disorientating, right? But I do think that if we allow ourselves to give up something, it may be easier for us to pass on that legacy that we are attached towards. This is also a decan where we sometimes can make severe judgments and ultimatums. There's a decan daimon in this decan called Praxidike, the exactor of justice. Be very careful about making ultimatums when we have this decan activated, because I have learned, since this is the last decan before the summer solstice, where the sun actually changes direction, okay, or appears to change direction from rising in the sky to starting to set, I guess, in relationship to the ecliptic. Oftentimes those judgments that we make, there are reversals around them. So be very careful about making a judgment that is too harsh or too severe, because you may have to change course. Now, when we see the next day going on the 15th here, and I'm just going rapid fire through some of these things. I talk a lot about these things in my astrology of September, if you want to get a deep dive into that. But I'm just preparing you for this unfolding energy of the eclipse. Venus is going to sextile Mars on the 15th, okay? So Venus at 24, 25 degrees of Leo, sextiling Mars. And that's going to be the beginning of a benefic enclosure of Mars. So we can see in our chart here, we have Jupiter and Venus. Venus is going to start making, once it sextiles, it's going to make a sextile on one side of Mars, and Jupiter is going to make a sextile on the other side of Mars, enclosing them with their benefic ray. So if we are having some difficulty choosing, if we're having some difficulty going back and forth with trying to find the right balance, our ability to dig deep for courage with Venus in the third decan of Leo, our ability to defend our authenticity, and our ability to understand what to do with excess with Jupiter in the third decan of Cancer, of being able to be generous with our excesses and to figure out how to fill our scarcity. The ability to do so with Jupiter making that sextile ray is going to be enhanced. So if you're having some struggles with Mars in the late degrees of Libra, where you're just having difficulty finding the equilibrium, finding the balance, you're going to get some protection and some help from the two benefic planets, at least for a few days. So this is going to be happening between the 15th and then the 19th. So it ends when Venus moves into Virgo. So take advantage of that time. If you've been having some struggle or some difficulty, you could really have like some guardian angel type of energy around that period of time. Now that's good, because we also are going to see Mercury opposing Saturn on the 17th. So Mercury at 28 degrees, 28, 29 degrees of Virgo is going to be opposing Saturn at 28 degrees of Pisces. So this is one where our desire to preserve something or to push back the forces of entropy and decay are going to run right smack into Saturn. So there may be some periods where we might feel a little bit thwarted, might feel some depression, we might have some wild swings of emotion, but I do think that it's very temporary. So try not to get too fixated on the delays in the process. Javier is coming in with some positives about the snail. Says the snail feels at home everywhere. It always has somewhere to withdraw. It is independent of others and has its own rhythm. Ooh, I like that. And that's very, very Virgo too, right? Being able to feel comfortable in solitude. Somewhere to withdraw, yep. Okay, so after Mercury opposes Saturn, it's going to move into Libra on the 18th, okay? Here you see Mercury getting ready to move into Libra, and it will automatically or instantaneously almost start opposing Neptune by whole sign and by aspectual degree. So the solutions that we are trying to come up with the Mercury Saturn opposition, they may lead to some illusions or delusions about our independence, our ability to act under our own power, when what we really need is to start negotiating a win-win situation. All right, Mercury is helping us to have the discussions that can help us to say, hey, how can we create a situation where both parties win, rather than just trying to dominate or to feel like we have to do everything on our own. It's okay to open up, I think, to help around this period of time. The fact of our complete independence, where we can move completely under our own power without any permission or help from anyone else, is illusionary at this point, right? It is being glamorized in a way that could be pretty toxic once we wake up from that dream. So be careful of trying to do things too much onto your own power. When we get to the 19th, we're going to see Mercury starting to trine both Uranus and Pluto. So this could be another instance. This is a grand air trine that I talked about in the Astrology of September. And this is something where we might see a social event, where this is more collective energy, where I think that there is going to be some pushback on some of the authoritarianism that we've seen out in the collective recently worldwide. And there's a significant position of Pluto that is manifesting beginning in September. It's actually happened as I'm recording this right now. It started on the 28th of August, where we see Pluto moving out of bounds in its southern declination. Traditionally, when a planet moves out of bounds, it is not operating within the socially acceptable way. Now, Pluto, a planet of great destruction and transformation, but also transmutation, of having things erupt that we've pushed underneath the surface and exposing corruption. When it's in its northern declination, we see authoritarian leadership start to take over and to put pressure on the masses. This is a period of time where we saw the last time this was happening was around the Holocaust in World War II. Horrific events that were happening that created a lot of suffering for the collective based on the actions of individuals that did not have their best needs in mind. When we see the southern declination, though, we see power returning to the people. We see revolutions. We see uprisings. We see leaders falling from grace because the collective is done with their shit. And sometimes that can be pretty violent and destabilizing as well. So I do think that if you're not happy with the way things have been going from a leadership perspective, and many of us, myself included, have been very, very upset about the way things have been going, this may give us some hope that the collective might start to become empowered. Now, that does have its drawbacks. Remember, this is a channel that is preaching balance. I want to make sure that I reiterate this on this broadcast, because I said it on the Astrology of September as well. Mars is about to move into Scorpio, okay, on the 22nd, and make a square to Pluto. So this, to me, is one of the types of events where, because of Mercury's trine to both the Uranus and Gemini, Pluto and Aquarius, both in the first decans of an air sign, and Mercury in the first decan of Libra, that is associated with anger at injustice, that we are probably going to be having a lot of ideas about how to push back on injustice. There might be a lot of organization, general strikes, protests, things of that nature, lots of communications and grievances being aired about how unfair things have been unfolding. And make no mistake, they've been unfolding in a very unfair way for many, many people around the globe. I would caution you, though, that the pushback, if it becomes violent, could explode into violence that would be very, very destructive, with Mars in Scorpio squaring Pluto in Aquarius. That is a difficult aspect for collective events. So this could be like if you're out protesting and things disintegrate really quickly. You could be in real danger. So that is just my public service announcement for this period of time, especially when we get to the Mars in Scorpio, Sun into Libra period, is that we just need to be careful that the way that we are pushing back against authoritarian power doesn't necessarily trigger the very events that the authoritarian power would desire to increase their authoritarian power. I guess this is a long way of saying don't give the authoritarian dictators any reasons or justifications for enacting even more draconian laws and martial law, because they're itching. They are itching for people to create situations that they would be able to use as an excuse to put the screws tighter on people. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't organize and resist. It just means that there has to be a caginess about it, a balanced way of doing so. And I don't have the greatest answers to that. This is me just reading the signs and trying to help people avoid a violent situation where they are in danger. But again, we're heading into really extremely volatile times when it comes to Venus square Pluto, when it comes to Pluto out of bounds. And again, maybe in the long term, this will lead to a re-empowerment of the collective, of the masses, of a redistribution of power, of wealth, of human rights. All of those things could be positive manifestations. Maybe we want to avoid that particular day when Mars is making the square to Pluto, or be extra cautious on that day so that we don't create a backslide, so that we don't create the opposite of what we're doing, so that we don't have the faith-on experience of overestimating our ability and then having a fall from grace. What happened in the faith-on myth is that he tried to drive the chariot, and he basically got shot down by Zeus and drowned in the Eridanus. So we have to pace ourselves. We have to be cagey and intelligent about how we organize and how we push back on authoritarian power, especially when the people that are in power right now have access to a ton of resources when it comes to being able to create violence and being able to create disempowerment of people. We have to be very cagey about that. So that's my little warning. Javier says, I'm so curious as to how this will work out with the new school year starting. Yeah. Well, we saw this week that we had some really difficult experiences with more violence, more gun violence in America. Huge tragedy. And I don't know. I will have to see, because in America, we've had people that are just literally trying to dismantle the Department of Education, dismantle education in this country, defund schools and things of that nature. So we're at a really precarious time for democracy and for the organizations that we've come to rely on, not only for ourselves, but for our children and things of that nature. So we'll see. Javier says, good advice. Obviously, fighting hate with hate doesn't work. I truly believe that in my heart of hearts. If you just keep adding fuel to that fire, the fire is just going to get bigger. You know, I think we have to, again, I don't have all the answers, but I do know that the way that I'm choosing to fight this authoritarian fear-mongering administration / global takeover is practicing kindness, creating community, being the opposite of what they want us to be, to release my fear or to utilize that fear to create local communities, to create situations that can bring hope into people's lives rather than just continuing to add to the fear. It's not easy to do. It's going against the grain on some level, but if you believe in things like love, if you believe in things like the ability of humanity to rise above some of these challenges, sometimes we have to surrender to that. This is where part of that faith comes in, because a lot of us are going to feel like we have to do something. We have to do all these things. Yes, we will have to do things, but we first have to have the vision of, and the energetic alignment, I guess you could say, with those positive, hopeful things. And if we're constantly living in distracted fear, it's going to be very difficult to do so with clarity. And the I-Ching is going to teach us that this week. I'm going to preview that. Our inner stillness will create clarity, and we'll be able to create manifestations that are much more, have the possibility of working out, rather than these chaotic kind of actions that may diffuse the message, may diffuse the goal, right? If we're not organized and we're going off in a chaotic way, it can actually be counterproductive to the types of things that people are trying to accomplish. Javier says, some people think I'm naive to think, but I don't know, miracles are real. I think they are. I do think that miracles are real. I think that I've had so many things that have happened in my life that I couldn't explain, that were blessings through surrendering, that I just think that they do manifest. There are possibilities. There are miracles. That is to say, there are tragedies too. There are things that we can't avoid, that are painful, that create suffering, that we need to take action towards remedying as well. Again, balance. Balance is the key. I would never tell anyone here to just hide your head in the sand and not do anything. You have to do stuff. You have to have the vision, and you have to act on the vision. But if you try to do too many things, or do things in a way that aren't organized and aren't working with the universe and the powers of love, it won't be as positive of a manifestation. Okay, yes, balance, absolutely. And clarity. If you've ever been in a fight or something like that, the person that's just wildly swinging is leaving themselves vulnerable for a haymaker on the chin. Okay. But the composed person, the kung fu master, where every movement has purpose. I mean, they're going to be just like Neo in the Matrix. Like, they're just going to see these moves coming, being able to dodge, and just like they're in the flow state, right? It really is incredible, like the paradoxes that we live in, as far as like surrendering versus trying to have control in lives. It's mysterious, but that's part of the beauty of it too. Now, the other thing that's happening on the 19th is you're going to see Venus moving into Virgo that day. Okay, 19th and the 20th, it's moving into Virgo. That's the end of the benefic enclosure of Mars. Okay, the end of the benefic enclosure. So while we have a protection around that period of time between the 15th and the 19th, I could see all sorts of things getting organized, like hope and things like that. Like we really are starting to see movement. But the benefic protection is gone after that. Okay, and that's when we're in a vulnerable state, especially as we see both Saturn starting to oppose the Sun, or the Sun starting to oppose Saturn, where there might be some frustration that next day. Okay, Sun moving into opposition, these power struggles potentially, and then that also bringing us to the new moon solar eclipse in Virgo. Okay, so that is our next kind of big chapter marker moment. We'll do an entire broadcast on that, but this one has a little bit different energy. This one is an opposite, as flowing as all the aspects are in the full moon lunar eclipse in Pisces. This one has some real gnarly stuff. It is exactly opposite Saturn. Feelings of frustration. Mars is going to be at the anaretic degree of Libra and about to move into that square with Pluto. So a potentially frustrating one is going to be coming up with the new moon solar eclipse. We'll talk about it. We'll break it down. But shortly after that, Mars moves into Scorpio, and then the Sun moves into Libra, and there's our fall equinox. So all of the things I've been talking about are building to this Mars-Pluto point. Again, balance is the key. Clarity is the key. Inner peace and stability is the key. Okay? That's going to lead to the best possible actions that you can take, whether you need to surrender to something in the moment or take action when you're called upon. we surrender to divine purpose. We surrender and create space in our lives so that we can be available for when Spirit wants to act through us. So we can hear the voice of the divine and we can say, yep, that's it. That's the moment, right? I'm sorry to beat this metaphor to death, but the Green Bay Packers, they're on my mind today. They have first of all, it's a community-owned franchise. They do not have a billionaire owner. Jerry Jones, the owner of the Dallas Cowboys, is the poster child for privileged billionaire class ownership that tries to skirt all the rules and utilize his money and influence and power to push his thumb down on everyone around him. This is interesting to me because a franchise like the Packers is very patient. They have set themselves up financially to say, we aren't going to get involved in all of these big money contracts, etc. And we aren't going to make a big move before it's the right one. So they have practiced this patience over time, partially because they're owned by the community and they don't have an impatient owner that's pushing them to do all of these things. So they are operating with their ethos, with the essence of their vision. But they had the clarity to recognize an opportunity. They had set themselves up for the Kairos moment to be able to pounce when a player became available that was in his prime, literally a top 3 defensive player in the entire league. And he wasn't being appreciated by his other franchise. And they swooped in and they had set themselves up through their clarity and their vision to potentially pull off one of the most historic trades in their franchise's history. Now, to me, that is a great lesson. We can learn things from sports. We can learn things from outside situations. It doesn't matter if you like sports or not. We can learn from that. We can learn from their clarity. We can learn from their ability to say, I'm going to wait until the opportunity is right. And I'm not going to get distracted by all this other stuff, all of these other mandates and dictates. We're not going to try to do things the way that everyone else has done things. We're going to keep our books clean. We're not going to overpay for things. We're going to be patient. We're going to draft and develop. And it paid off because when the opportunity came, they had the clarity of mind to say, this is it. This is the one. And they've done that. It would be unique if they hadn't done it already 2 or 3 times in the last 30 years. Like for those of you who are football fans, they did it in the Ron Wolf era when they pounced on getting the quarterback Brett Favre, and then shortly after that, Reggie White, the Minister of Defense, became available as a free agent, and signing him completely changed the trajectory and the vision of that franchise from NFL Siberia to a place that people wanted to come, and they eventually won a Super Bowl. In the Aaron Rodgers and Ted Thompson era, they had Aaron Rodgers, another franchise quarterback, and they went out and got a former Defensive Player of the Year, Charles Woodson. For those of you from Michigan, Heisman winner Charles Woodson completely changed the trajectory of their franchise and brought them a Super Bowl. This is the same moment where they have a young quarterback who is in the prime of his career, and they went out and they struck and got a defensive game changer. So it's a pattern. It's an organizational ethos. So to me, that tells me and that shows us that we have to prepare for our moment. We have to have ethics and ethoses that animate all of our actions. And we need to stick to those things. Our values are what is important. When you have a certain value as an organization, as an individual, as a family, you will then be able to take action because of your clarity and because you have been prepared for that moment. So to me, that is the best way to deal with what we're dealing with here. The way to say, I'm going to keep practicing my values, even in the face of all this resistance. I'm going to keep practicing my calm, centered, spiritual practices so that when someone in my community needs my help, I'm able to just snap into action, that Kairos moment. When the opportunity presents to make progress, Instead of forcing it, you're going to be able to respond to that moment rather than forcing it into happening. That is what I think will be the best way to navigate these challenging transits, these challenging times, through stillness, centeredness, and being able to act on your values when the time comes and is appropriate and is shown to you through the space that you've created to hear the voice of the divine. So, thank you for bearing with me. Javier says, I like the sports connections personally. I love sports. I got to tell you, I played sports growing up. I totally, completely understand some of the pushback on organized sports, especially in these large businesses in America and the challenges of it. Totally get it. We can criticize those parts of it while still appreciating some of the beauty, grace, and hard work that goes into some of these athletes living out their dreams. And I just see it as another vehicle to understand human nature. There's nothing like having your back against the wall, pushing yourself to your physical, emotional, and spiritual limits, even if it's a game, even if it's an exhibition. It can teach us a lot about what it means to be human. It can teach us a lot about through, I think, hopefully, through a game. What it does is it allows us to work through some of the more challenging human emotions in a way that doesn't necessarily create a life or death situation. Now, we can make arguments on that, but I do think that it's a healthy outlet for some of the challenging human emotions that we experience. Sometimes for our competitive natures, for our desire to push ourselves to our physical limit and emotional limits. If you have a team that you love, like let's say, dedication. Javier, I'm sure that maybe coming from Nicaragua, maybe world football, soccer might have been pretty big down there, I'm guessing. You tell me if it is or not, but the loyalty, the passion, the ability to feel connection to other people in your community, that you join together with that, it's such a powerful feeling. And being able to learn from that, it teaches us a lot, Javier says. I agree. And I learned a lot. I learned a lot about failure being an athlete. And I learned a lot about failure being a fan. Every year in every sport, there's only one champion. All the other teams in that league or in that place, they don't win. And that's somewhat of a failure. And you learn to accept that. You learn that there is some times when you aren't going to win, and that there's circumstances beyond your control. Especially in football, there's a lot of injury luck you need to have. So sometimes there are forces that are greater than you that you have to surrender to. So there's so much we can learn astrologically and in life and philosophically from that. So anyway, Javier says soccer and baseball are the biggest. It's a beautiful game, and there are beautiful lessons from it. So friends, that's what I've got for you for the eclipse. Let's take a look at the I-Ching and the animal. Javier says, me too. Even if we lost, we still congratulated the other side and shook their hand, for example. Yeah, exactly. Sportsmanship. That was one of my favorite parts I was a hockey player, and I played baseball and basketball as well. But I always made friends with people on the other team. I remember one of my fondest memories was going out to a pizza place with a rival team after we had a game, and just I had a good friend on another team, a couple cities away, and we even became like pen pals for a period of time. It's just kind of just really interesting how we can have that competition, but then find unity in our shared love for that sport moving forward. So let's talk about the I-Ching here, because I think it's a really good one. Here we have hexagram number 52, changing to hexagram number 15. Now, this is keeping still, right? The mountain, changing to number 15, which translates to humility. So keeping still, mountain, restraint, being quiet, attaining inner peace, enduring, taking one day at a time. So I'm going to read you a few excerpts from Jack Balkin's The Laws of Change. He says, in halfway down the page here, when you are angry and distressed, the world looks disordered and confused. But when you are perfectly calm, you see the world with greater clarity. Being still allows you to see beyond the surface turbulence of life and the petty struggles of the day, and to look more deeply into the nature of things. Beyond the chaos and commotion lie deeper truths. Take a deep breath, collect your thoughts, and reflect. You will get nowhere if you obsess about your problems. That will only cause anxiety to build and build until you feel that you absolutely must do something. And then you are likely to do precisely the wrong thing. If you make your decisions based on worry and apprehension, you are likely to misjudge and exaggerate things. But when your mind is still and your emotions are centered, you will make no mistakes. Calm yourself and you will be able to see more deeply into the situation, and then everything will appear in its proper perspective. I love that. Poise is, I think, part of this hexagram. I love watching not just football, not just baseball, whatever. I love the Olympics. I love seeing people like archers in the Olympics that have to get so still before they even draw that bow back. And they have to be so patient. They have to be completely in that moment before they let that arrow go to hit their target. It's just beautiful. It's a moment of complete serenity before they let that arrow go. And this is that we can take so many lessons from that. We can take the lesson of centering ourselves, of the mental centeredness it takes to perform at our very best. Now, there's a changing line here. It's at the top. It says magnanimous good fortune. Like that. It says emotional stability is the secret to success. Remain centered and nothing can cause you to lose your balance. The great lesson of this line is that peace comes to those who are at peace, while conflict seems to ever attach itself to those who are conflicted inside. The truth is revealed to those who are at rest, and so are true within, while deception hounds those who have no rest, and so deceive themselves. When your composure is so complete that it affects everything you say and do, your good fortune is assured. No matter what endeavor you pursue, your tranquility and self-possession will stand you in good stead. Man, I mean, if that's not an indictment on, or a positive sign for centering ourselves and becoming so at peace and so composed that every action we take within that state is probably going to be the right one, then that to me is the greatest prescription that we can get from the I-Ching here. And that will lead us to humility, modesty, humbleness, moderation, temperance, maintaining a balanced attitude, fulfilling our duties, and carrying things through to completion. I mean, this is the benefit of keeping still, is that we will be able to act with modesty. We're not going to be acting from a place of ego. We're going to be acting from a place of centeredness, and that's going to lead to hopefully the best possible outcome. All right. Javier says, perfect. Yeah, I love it. This is a great hexagram for this eclipse. Javier says, I agree. Even people playing chess, haha, darts and pool. I'm a big golf fan. Do the mental endurance alone. Absolutely. It can really test you in those moments. And I think you become better for it. I know that I wish I had learned some of the meditation techniques and the centering techniques when I was a young athlete coming up, because I was just a ball of chaos and energy. I had so much energy. I was so passionate and I tried so hard. I wasn't necessarily the biggest or the most physically skilled or blessed. I mean, on a good day, I was about 5'10" and 155 pounds when I was 17 years old, and much smaller than that up to that point. But man, I just ran around chaotically, and it worked on some level. But if I had learned the centering techniques, I think I could have been so much more in the flow state and probably would have been twice as successful as an athlete rather than just relying on being a chaos agent. So a really, really good one for this eclipse. Javier says, body, mind, soul connection projected into action. Absolutely. And I will tell you, music is another avenue for this. I had to learn to control my anxiety about performing and being on stage. And become in the moment, become one with my guitar and with my voice. And I really learned a lot through that as well. So sports is about performance, just like music can be about performance, and calming the waters can really lead to a much better outcome. Now, the animal we've got is a good one. Here we have the woodpecker. Check this out. This is a beautiful, oh, what is this? This is a black-faced flameback woodpecker, which I think they have those in South America. We don't have these in the United States, but I think they are a Central and South American woodpecker. And I just wanted to find a unique bird because this is just, it's a perfect representation of an eclipse energy. Look at the kind of this new moon kind of, or sorry, full moon eclipse kind of thing where we got this kind of eclipse color. I love it. Woodpecker is really about two things: rhythm, drumming on a tree, right? This rhythmic action, searching dead wood for abundance and sustenance, resuscitating a project that might have been long forgotten. Like this might be true with the sun hanging out with the south node. Is how do you maybe re-engage with something you thought was completely dead and gone? I know for me, a lot of the things I've been thinking about lately is I've been thinking about my artistic career, my music, and I have so many recordings that I would love to put on the internet and just preserve, that maybe they would last past my lifetime. I've got all these videos recorded of performances, some of which I hope someday people will be able to see and remember. So you have to find the right tools for that, right? I have to find an old camcorder. Like I've got these camcorder tapes, so I got to find a camcorder on eBay or something. But the point being, revisiting something you thought might have already been dead, like drumming and penetrating that old project to be able to breathe new life into it, to find abundance and sustenance. Woodpecker also heralds new energy coming into your life. Like this is oftentimes when I see woodpeckers, it's a big a sign that something new is coming. New rhythms are coming into our lives, new projects. Sometimes they're from the past, but sometimes they're completely new. But digging deep for things, like finding things through depth, working old things to get to the abundance within. Okay, wow says, so pretty. It's a beautiful bird, isn't it? Yeah, I'm a bird nerd too. I used to go on a bird census with my grandfather and my dad. My grandfather was a biology professor, and he would take me out on these bird census. I also, in college, I was working with a scientist where they were tagging birds. They were capturing them in like this net, and then you would take them out of the net and tag them and send them off on their way. I got to hold a hummingbird during that. It was super cool, like grackles and hummingbirds. It's just beautiful. Yeah, Los Tres Caballeros woodpecker. Oh, I like that. Is that what they call these down there, potentially? Javier says, oh, yes, get to dem worms from the decaying branches. Absolutely, Javier. All right, my friends. That, I think, is what I've got for you today. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. Do me a huge favor before we end for the day. Please like this video. Subscribe to the channel. If you want to go over to buymeacoffee.com, you can become a patron over there. I always appreciate your support. Go over to spencermichaud.com. Sign up for a reading for the fall. Get yourself ready for the fall. Keep yourself aware of the deck and walk that's coming soon by signing up for the newsletter. Please sign up for the newsletter. Get 10% off any reading that I offer doing so. Yeah, just keep sharing your wisdom with us on these live streams. I really appreciate all of you stopping by. You can follow me over on social media, Instagram, Blue Sky, the Bird app, at Spencer Michaud. It's been lovely hanging out with you. Have a great eclipse season. Hang in there. Find your inner peace, your centeredness, and then be ready for the clear moment that's going to lead to the best possible outcomes. And then let's be kind to one another. Push back on all of the ills of the world by kindness, creating community, finding out how to find joy in the experience. And I think that's going to be a great antidote to all of the things that we're seeing out there in the world. So take care, friends. It's been great hanging out with you. Let's see. Ooh, we got some nice comments coming in. I've got humming feeders out in the yard. KWOW says, ooh, childhood memory from Disney movie. Okay. Thanks for a lot of stuff to contemplate. Okay, I'll check it out. Let's see. Thanks for all the wisdom. Thank you, friends. Have a great weekend. Lovely being here with all of you. All right, my friends. Have a good one. Take care. Be kind to yourself. That's where it all starts. You know, if you be kind to yourself and believe in yourself, that can lead to believing in others, believing in the beauty and hope in this world, and we'll get through it together. That's going to help us be kind to one another. So I'll see you the next time. Take care. Peace.